What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mac here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mac. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by Onyx Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is Onyx Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, Onyx Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust Onyx Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about Onyx, go to onyxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mac, and today I am in the HQ of Grayboe Riflestocks, the People's Riflestock, here sitting across from the man himself, Ryan McMillan. Ryan, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
It's good to have you here.
Dude, it is so much fun.
Facility.
Your facility's phenomenal.
Thanks.
This is quite a setup. Like, when I showed up and realized like where Grayboe was, and I drove down that road, and I was like, huh, this is it. And I walk in, and I see that beautiful wall. I'm like, oh, yeah. This is where I was meant to be, the People's Riflestock.
That's right, yeah.
In the facility itself. So, Ryan, what's been going on with you?
Oh man, just a lot. It's hard to. That's such a broad question. I could probably go on for days, but just plugging away at making rifle stocks and trying to get better every day, and trying to focus our attention on what we're good at, and just be the best company we can be.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so tell people, for people who are unfamiliar with Grayboe or the concept of rifle stocks, one thing why I specifically wanted to podcast with you today is in the world of ARs, in the platform of personalization, whether people put new rims on a truck, new tires, or they cut their hair a certain way because that's what sets them apart, you can do the exact same thing to a rifle.
Right.
A bolt action rifle, and that is by changing out the gun stock. That is the rifle stock that's on it.
That's right.
What's the background on you and rifle stocks?
Well, so my grandfather in the late 60s decided he was going to start using this kind of new technique back then of like hand laid up fiberglass. And he was going to use this technique to try to make rifle stocks. My grandfather had shot all through his childhood, growing up, was super into competitions, and was his passion really after he got out of the military. And he just started experimenting and figured out that he could make rifle stocks out of this hand laid up process, and it became something like it really revolutionized the industry. And since then, composite or fiberglass rifle stocks, or however you want to say, there's a number of different ways to say it, have really been the standard for excellence in the industry. There's some other ways to make stocks, but the way that there's no doubt in my mind, especially with the advances of how you can apply composites will be the future of rifle stock making for sure.
Yeah, and it's really changed the game because Granddad's gun was a walnut stock, right?
Yeah.
It was a wood stock. Maybe it was beat up. Maybe you refinished it. Maybe it had scratches, all that stuff. But you try to, like, wood stocks are so beautiful that you almost don't want to use them, I feel like.
Well, the big thing for him was the wood stocks. He was about competition, about accuracy. Of course, he was a hunter too, but really he was into the matches. And the wood stocks moved under different conditions, right? So under heat or cold or they got wet, they would move and they would affect your accuracy. It would put stress on the barrel or the action. And so that was a big problem, and that was something to be solved back then for people to become the best shooters they could.
Yeah. So you come from a lineage of shooters. You yourself, you're a shooter, but in different regards. You're a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL.
Yep.
How many years did you spend in the military?
7, just under 7. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was your motivation? Like, why SEALs?
Yeah, I don't know. It was in a lot of ways it was a last minute decision. I was 20 when I enlisted, and I don't think I really even had any thoughts about going into the military until just a few months before I enlisted. I'm not 100% sure. I think based upon some things that happened in my childhood, I just felt like I wanted to do something very difficult. I don't know. It was in me to want to go do difficult things. I was influenced by some TV shows back then, that we all know in the 90s that were, awesome warrior shows. And I was always the type of person who I saw something that I really liked and I just wanted to go do it. And I remember thinking back, I was always really interested in people who loved like these cool war movies or whatever.
Yeah.
And they could just go on about their day the next day and never think about it. Like I was like, that's what I want to do. Like that's what I want to do. And so, at that time it was a very short amount of time, compact amount of time that really influenced me. And then I just made a decision very quickly. And within a few months after I had gone to MEPS, I was in. And luckily, when I went to MEPS, is the place that you you start your process, your journey to the military. And they had a program for me back then that I could go after boot camp and A school. I could go right to BUDS instead of having to go to a ship. I'm like, sign me up. And so I did that, and that was probably the best decision I ever made in my life.
Yeah, dude, and it's quite a what's a way to say this is like it's a huge resume builder, a resume statement for people. There's so many motivational speakers, writers, authors, all because of being a Navy SEAL.
Well, and nowadays too, it really became famous after the Bin Laden thing.
Right.
And so now being a Navy SEAL it was always people knew about it, but it was still had a secretive side to it. And now it's like, with social media and stuff, everybody, it's really cool to be, and popular, not popular, but it's an in thing to be a SEAL. It's a weird feeling because it's changed totally since when I was interested in it, when it was a kind of secret society, to now this super open thing, because everybody's just an open book nowadays, especially if you want to be successful. You have to kind of put yourself out there in the world of Instagram and Facebook to,
Right. Right.
So,
how do you think being a SEAL has helped you with your company, Grayboe?
well, it's hard to say exactly, but the better way to put it is just how it's kind of helped me in life. It's hard to know exactly right after you get out of the military how it impacts you and how you've changed, because everything's so close. But when the older you get and the more you're able to look back and see how that steered you in that direction, or how you were able to be steered in a direction, it's really actually quite profound, I think, when you have something to compare other people that didn't go through it, or something like that. And actually, more than anything, I think BUDS itself, SEAL training itself, was the most impactful thing. You're so young and so influenced at that point in time, and to have such a life-changing opportunity, and your whole world is so turned upside down, and everything's just kind of just kind of ripped from you, and you're just kind of reborn in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Everything everything, like, how much can you push your body? How much can you push your mind? Like, when you're young, you don't know any of this stuff. And in some ways, being young, it's the best time to do it because you don't know any better. I always say that there's this, being like 21 or so is the perfect age, because you're mature enough to be able to make it through, but you're still naive enough not to realize how bad it sucks and what you're really. Because if I was going to go through it now, I'd overthink too many things, and you just get older and your mind just gets too hardened. But when you're young, you're still malleable enough to just do it because you're motivated, and you're more trusting in a lot of ways of people you don't know, and you just don't have that experience.
So you joined 18 out of high school?
No, I was 20. I had a couple of years of college to fart around. I didn't, I was still trying.
No direction, kind of just figuring out.
Yeah, and I was a decent student, and I was a good kid, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just, the path at that time was just, okay, go to high school and then go to college. And so that's what I did. And I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out, I'm sure, at some point in college. As a matter of fact, I really didn't even think about it that much. And at the end of high school and the beginning of college, I wasn't thinking about a ton about what I wanted to do with my life. It just kind of just really happened all of a sudden. And like I said, it was because some influential, shows that you watch, like, oh, this is what you could do in the world. Wow, this is awesome. Let me do that.
Dude, for me, I saw my senior year of high school was 2001, 2002, but I saw Black Hawk Down.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, all I want to be is a ranger. I want to jump out of helicopters, be surrounded, and live that life. My life didn't go down that route, and grateful for where I am today. But however, there's a part of me that I feel like is maybe what you were looking for, is like, you wanted to prove yourself in some way, or you wanted to know what you could accomplish.
Yeah.
Like, where do you fit in the world, right? Like the hierarchy of how things go.
Yeah, and I think it was more just like an internal thing. I don't think it wasn't a pressure from the outside. It was more just, I felt like, you interact with people. I just remember being young and interacting with people, and, people can be mean. Everybody can, me included, right? Like, and when people say things to you, sometimes it just hit home. Like, like, I just wanted to prove everybody wrong,
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily proving everybody wrong. It was proving to myself that I could be somebody more than what people thought that I could be.
Yeah.
And I've always could really care less about people outside of my close influence and circle, but it was more for me. Just, can I do this? And so,
inspiration and motivation are a very interesting thing. And then also the idea of I had a very life-changing moment, life-transforming moment where I voted for myself. And I feel like in society nowadays, people aren't taught to vote for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's you from outsider's perspective. I'm looking at you, hearing you tell the story, and I'm like, oh, you chose to vote for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to win, and so you're like, I'm doing this because I want to win. I know I can do it. Whether it's proven haters wrong or anyone else, it's like, no, you're going to elevate yourself. You're going to believe in yourself enough to accomplish it. And I love that. And that is the whole idea of the Soulful Hunter, is saying, I'm going to have the courage to step into the uncomfortable, into the unknown, and accomplish something. That's phenomenal.
It's pretty amazing what we're capable of. The hardest thing is taking that first step.
Yeah.
And then you just got to keep taking steps after that, whether it's, on a big time hunt, whether it's going to be a Navy SEAL, whether it's starting a business, there's all kinds of stuff. Just starting that. And that's why I say as you get older, sometimes you can overthink just starting things,
Yes.
When you're young, you just got so much in front of you and there's nothing to lose. And as you get older, you have more to lose. And so that's why it gets more difficult mentally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a cool experience. And like I said, the best thing I ever did.
Did you have direction? Like, obviously, you join, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a SEAL. That's your goal.
Mm-hmm.
When you became one, did you have a long-term goal of trajectory of like where you're going to end up after this? Or was that like the pinnacle?
Really. Yeah, I mean, I knew what SEALs did. I mean, after I got interested, I started watching more about it, but it's hard to really know exactly. I didn't think a lot about afterwards. I will say this. I really was interested in going to SEAL Team 2 because at the time they were the cold weather SEAL team. When I was in Buds, the whole system changed and it became West Coast SEALs did half of the globe and East Coast SEALs did the other half. So, and we were in the Middle East, so there was no going and and shooting on snowshoes. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like, I felt like I just wanted to, get through Buds really was my main concern.
Yeah.
And then after that, whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't I was never the type of person who was like, I felt like I was going to stay in for 20 years. I always kind of knew it was going to be somewhat of I want to say short term because 7 years isn't short, but I knew it wasn't likely I was going to spend 20 in there because I had other ambitions that as I started making my way through Buds and SEAL Team, I started to have other thoughts about what else can I do and seeing other people doing things. And so,
yeah.
And ultimately, I'm a pretty independent person. And even as a SEAL, as independent as SEALs can be, you're still part of the Navy and you're still do what they tell you to all the time. And over a period of time, some people are great with that. They love that. And other people like me I wanted to kind of be more in control of my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing.
Yeah. And here you are today in control running Grayboe. So let's talk about these rifle stocks. First off, I believe you have the ultimate marketing slogan, the People's Rifle Stock. Phenomenal. And listeners, if you are unfamiliar with Grayboe, go check it out because the People's Rifle Stock is where it's at. And so getting back to this whole idea of creating a gun to be whatever it is you want it to be, that is what putting a custom stock on a gun is all about.
Yep.
So for you, Ryan, where it was in the family, but at what point were you like, okay, I got an idea?
Well, after I got out of the military, I felt like because the business was a family business, I felt like I wanted to go back and give it a shot. I wasn't always that interested in it, to be honest with you, in the business, but I went back and started McMillan Firearms with my dad, and we did that for 7 or 8 years. There were some great things about that company, but ultimately there were some things that I ultimately just didn't resonate with what I wanted to do. And then I ended up getting into Grayboe, and I really started to really enjoy that. I like the manufacturing aspect. I like designing parts. I like the whole process. And I felt like I was, with Grayboe, I was a lot more in control of the product and the process. Rather than at McMillan, we did a lot of outsourcing parts, and we were more of just an assembler. And to me, it just wasn't as exciting for me. I like to be the creator, and so that's what led me to Grayboe, and that's what's led me here. And every day, we have our own design team and our own manufacturing facility, and we just plug away at trying to make the best stock we can every single day. And so that's exciting to me. It's exciting for me to wake up every single day and come to work. And there's obviously challenges, and some days are difficult. Obviously, as a business owner, there's a lot of difficult days, but it's exciting overall to try to build something that's quite frankly pretty complex. I mean, rifle stocks and molding composite rifle stocks is not an easy task.
Right. No, I believe it. So in the world of long range shooting, that has become a craze as of late.
Yeah.
And a crossover of long range shooters and hunting. And I see a lot more hunters at times are starting to go with more of a chassis style build, and they're going to, shrink the barrel down or make it a carbon fiber barrel to lighten the load, but still want that ability to reach out at 800 and touch something. The direction of Grayboe, you guys build something for everybody.
Right.
How many rifle stocks do you guys actually offer in your
We
lineup?
have 7 models right now, right? Yeah, 7 models. And we're actually getting ready to launch a few new models, and I think at some point we might actually discontinue a few. We want to be different, and I mean not different just to be different, but because of the way we make stocks and the way we manufacture things, we can create new types of rifle stocks that people haven't seen that are functionally better, but they also look different. So the Phoenix and the Trekker are both very classic examples of how we can make things different, better, lighter, stronger, due to how we design and how we make product. So I think as we go forward, and I've been talking to a lot of our customers about this too. People are really starting to like our new style, and I've heard from some people that it can get a little confusing when you see this really traditional stock, like we have like the Outlander, and then we have these newer, really cool stocks like the Trekker, and we're launching another stock in a couple months called the Eagle that'll be similar in nature.
So when it lands, we'll shout it from the rooftops. The Eagle's landed.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's we have 7 models now, but we're really trying to pare down. We're really trying to get efficient with what we do. We want to pack the most features into each product that we can, and we don't want to just get too big and bulky. As a business, if you get too big and bulky and cumbersome, you just get inefficient. You can't make product well. You can't make it efficient. You can't make it cheap. So our goal is to pack as many features into a certain amount of stocks and really focus on those as a line, as a line of stocks. And, like an example, McMillan, they have so many different models of stocks. They just have so much complexity. And they were able to do it because they're more of a custom, every stock is custom. But for us, that's just not how we're built. We really need to be lean as we can. And I think that's important to make sure that every stock model is packed with features, but we don't have 20 stock models. We may have 6 or 7 total.
So when I got to experience the Phoenix, man, was that last year or the year before? I can't even remember right now. Was super shocked to see a bubble level in the stock. I was like, oh man, if I would have known that the stock, now I didn't do my research before it, or it was right before the Phoenix was launching and all this stuff, but I was like, oh, it would have saved me some money. I don't have to go buy a bubble level for my scope now. The adjustable cheek rest, like all these different things that are super beneficial. The M-lock that you have on it is what people are looking. It's keeping up with the industry, which is really phenomenal.
Well, and not just keeping up, but really trying to do something unique. If you look at composite rifle stocks out there, most people, let alone people who aren't necessarily shooters every day or in the industry, they cannot tell the difference between a McMillan, a Manners, an AG Composites. There's just almost no way to do it unless you know each model and you can pick out the nuances. So that makes it hard to put your brand out there on the shooting line, because most people, honestly, who don't shoot all the time and are not super into this, they don't even know that you can take a stock off and replace it, like we talked about. So telling people that you're a rifle stock company, that's a big task because there's a lot of people who don't know. But the other thing what you got to do is you've got to be able to create that visual for people too. Now, we didn't set out to create a visual. We set out to make a stock that was high performing. But in so doing, we've created this unique kind of set of rifle stocks that screams Grayboe, I think, beyond the others. And so when you see a Phoenix, there's no mistaking that for any other stock on the market.
Absolutely not. So. And it catches your eye, because I'm always, when I scroll Instagram, for example, and I'm just like looking, I'll look for the scope. What scope are they running? I'll look at the barrel. Are they running a carbon fiber? Or is it fluted? Can I pick up on the action or anything? But that stock typically is just a stock until you come across a Phoenix or a Grayboe where you're like, that pops, catches your eye. Yeah. And not only that, but you guys also offer in-house dipping. Yeah. Which, if you want pretty much almost any texture, color, pattern, or like, I brought my Phoenix in to get dipped in Cryptek Obscura because I saw it and I was like, dude, I got to have that. It's phenomenal.
We can't keep Phoenix. If it's hard to keep any Phoenix in stock for us, let alone a dip, there's no way. I mean, the Phoenix is such a good seller for us that, the combination of some cool dip and the Phoenix, we can't keep them on the shelf.
Yeah, and for a killer price as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the key, right? Like, it's the key for the customers. It's also the key for us in another way. But we have so many. The Phoenix is so feature rich compared to our competitors that we are by far and away the best value in that space. But for us, trying to create a stock that was unique in its own way and functional, like, it really enabled us to focus on our production process and focus on putting the features in there and keeping it at a really good cost, because that's kind of who we are. We're not the company who's going to launch a $1,000 stock. We launch a stock that's at a good price because that's what we've developed as our company.
Because you're the people's rifle stock.
Because we're the people's rifle stock.
You're the people's rifle stock company.
Yeah.
100%. So, okay, man, I got so many questions. So I want to make sure we keep this going and on track. A lot of people don't know that you can change out a rifle stock. It's only 2 bolts.
Super simple.
Super simple.
Yep.
Talk to us about that.
Well, you've got to make sure that you have, the caliber of your rifle. And there's a group of calibers that are what we call short action calibers, and there's a group of calibers that are long action calibers, and there's some other weird ones, but let's just stick to those 2. You have to know which one you have. And most of the time, let's say you call in or you text us or email us and you say, hey, I've got a 300 Win Mag. We know it's a long action. Like, we'll take care of that. You just have to know the caliber. Once you do, we'll make sure that we get you the right stock to fit, right? And then all it is literally is removing the 2 what are called guard screws or action screws and taking that off. And, there's usually a bottom metal there, some kind of BDL system or mag system that you take out, that's held in by the guard screws as well. And you take the guard screws out and you take your mag box off out of the stock. You put your old stock aside. You grab the new stock. You put that bottom metal housing in the stock. You put the stock on the barreled action, and you screw the screws right back in. And I probably just explained it way more complicated than it really is.
Right. People are like, BDL.
Yeah, like, what's that? No, I forget sometimes that, like, people don't even know this nomenclature, but it's the only way to explain it.
Right. So the concept of whether you're bolt action rifle is a bottom loader
Mm-hmm.
with either a magazine or a drop box. What do they call it? Trapdoor.
Yeah, for the BDL.
Is that what it is?
It's called a hinged floor plate or
A
something
hinged
like that. That's a more common term. But yeah, I think
By the way, I
we
also
get
love
the
the fact
point.
that you said nomenclature. Well played. I love that. So it's either that or you have a top feeder and you just need a solid metal bottom to cover that opening.
And very rarely do anybody have a top feeder anymore. Well, I mean, you can top feed, but what I mean specifically is that there's no capability of bottom feeding at all. So it's just like your stock is complete through the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, to load from the bottom, and so you feed it all through the
action opening.
The action opening, right?
Yeah.
So we don't even do any of those. They're so uncommon anymore. Everybody wants some kind of way to load it from the bottom, whether it's a magazine or some kind of hinge floor plate.
Yeah. So that brings me into my next thing is I have a Kimber Mountain Adirondack or whatever. Love the gun, but it's a Mauser action.
Mm-hmm.
You guys don't make stocks for Mausers, and it's exactly that. It's only fed from the top.
Yeah.
That stock is solid all the way through to the trigger guard.
Yeah. Well, over the hundreds of years that rifles have been being made, there have been a lot of different ways to do it. And unfortunately, the way that stocks work is we have to fit the action, and those actions are all different in a lot of ways. So the best we can do really, I mean, depends on what kind of company you are. A company like McMillan, they're truly a custom stock maker. And they've been around for so long, for 50 years, that they've got so many molds, and that's really what that's what keeps them going, is because they can offer rifle stocks that nobody else can for obscure actions, right? But for most companies, you stick to the major ones, right? Because it's 90% of the market is 6 or 7 actions, right? And then the other 10% is these just, hard to get, not hard to get, but older ones that people don't use as much anymore.
Right.
So,
yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. And at the same time, I see you like talking about McMillan. That's like the Kydex holster, right? All you need is a mold of a gun, and then you can make any sort of holster for that gun. But so you make rifle stocks for Remington 700.
Yeah.
So if you have a Remington 700 action.
Yeah, and the beauty about Remington 700 is all these custom action makers have built and designed their footprint, we call it, their footprint around the Remington 700, because they were smart to realize that all the accessories out there are for Remington 700s. So let's build an action that we can utilize all the existing accessories, so companies don't have to remake accessories. That helps them. Because that gives them more relevance, and people are more likely to buy their product if there's little fun toys they can put on it, right?
Totally.
So even bigger companies nowadays are making actions based upon the Remington 700 because they're finding it hard to get the breadth of accessories that they need to, for like companies like me who build stocks. Well, there's not nearly as many companies who build stocks for, let's say, a Howa as there is for a Remington 700. So the Howa company is limited on what they can actually do, and what other accessories they can bring in from vendors, because there's just not as many options out there.
Dude, it's like laser disc versus DVD versus HD DVD and Blu-ray, and at some point something has to win.
Yeah.
And
yep.
And so how does this is for the novice out there that's been like, I see all these pictures. I've always wanted to upgrade my stock. I'm a little scared. You already talked about just like 2 bolts and that's it. How do I know I have a Remington 700 action?
Well, if you have an actual Remington 700, it'll say it right there on the action itself. It'll say, I think it says Rem 700. Might say Remington. I can't remember. But there are all these other companies who make what we call clones. They're basically the same footprint. That means that you can use all the same accessories. You'll just have to know from the action maker. So if you bought a custom action, or you bought, let's say, a whole custom build, you'll just have to know whoever either sold you the action or built the rifle from you, for you, what footprint that action is. So
Mm-hmm.
it would be easy just to go, let's say it's your gunsmith, you just go to your gunsmith and say, hey, what action is this, and is it a Remington 700 clone? And they'll be able to tell you right away. People in the industry really do know this stuff, and I understand that it's not easy to remember all this. So for a hunter or someone who's buying a hunting gun or hunting equipment just a couple times a year, that's not something that's well known to them. But
Common nomenclature.
yeah, I mean, it's so crazy how sometimes we forget. And this is a relatively complex space, relatively complex industry, because there are so many rifles out there with so many options, and customers can easily get confused. But when you've been in this industry for 15 years, there's so much that you don't realize sometimes that people don't know. Like using just simple BDL, we talk about these multiple times a day, right?
Yeah.
Because, but most people don't even know what that means.
Dude, this is why I started the whole mentorship as conservation platform, because experienced hunters, once you leave that novice status, you forget what it is that a novice needs to know.
Yep.
And it's so easy to just like scream past that and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't even remember what I need to know.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so just off the top of your head, some common gun manufacturers that make Rem 700 clones.
Yeah, Defiance is the most popular one. Now, not every single action that they make is a Remington 700 clone, but most of them are. So if you're going to buy a Defiance, or you'd want to ask, hey, I really want a Remington 700 clone so I can have the most options for accessories. Stiller is one of them. Lone Peak is another.
Kelbley's.
I think Kelbley's is.
Yep.
I do know that their bottom metal has and I'm not sure if this is in their trigger, but there's something about the bottom metal portion, the portion that takes the magazine, that has a slight variation that we have to make a cut, but the action fits in there.
Okay.
So, and just to be clear too, it's not just the bottom metal, the portion that holds the magazine, is a whole different topic as well. It's a very similar concept to the action fitting properly, but it's a whole separate concept of what fits down there as well. And there has been some standardization around a footprint called the M5 footprint. Again, it's the same thing as the action. You have to ask, like if you're going to buy a DBM system, you have to ask, is this an M5 footprint? Because it has to match the stock.
Wild.
Yeah. I wish that whole part of the industry wasn't so complicated, because it is confusing for customers. But again, even if you don't know what you're doing, or you don't have an experience, and you just want to start somewhere, you can call us and we can help you through the process to get you all that information so that you know exactly what to get, so that everything fits together.
And you gotta love companies that have great customer service. I had on my last hunt, my spring bear hunt, I had a camera lens malfunction. And I'm like, crap, man. The last thing I want is $1,000 camera lens all of a sudden not working properly. Yeah. So I get out of the mountains and I'm researching the warranty, because it's only a year and a half old. And I'm like, oh, that's a 6-year warranty. And so I started looking into it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they specifically are focusing on customer service. Kind of like a Vortex Optics. Like, you're going to get treated really well, which you call up Grayboe, you get the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and now, especially in kind of modern times, we try to do our best to give you as many options as we can. So a lot of people nowadays don't want to talk to anybody. They just want quick access to information. So, we have text available. Of course, we have email. We try to put as much information on our website as we can. So there's a number of different ways to get information. But, becoming more and more popular is that text messaging.
Right.
So you literally can go on our website, and one of the first things that pops up, you have a question, text us. And so it's great. It's better than one of those chats, because if someone's not available to chat right then and there, you get frustrated and you don't know if your message got through.
Right.
You go to smaller companies and they don't always have someone available to chat, and you're just sitting there. For us, text message, we usually get back pretty quickly. Doesn't mean that we get back immediately, but most of the time we get back really quickly.
You guys still sleep at night.
We still sleep at night. Some of us do.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you talked about all these custom actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're gonna go, if any hunter who just went to a Cabela's, went to a Shields, went to a Sportsman's Warehouse, and bought an off-the-shelf rifle, 700 clones would be what, Tikkas, Christensen Arms.
No, Tikka's its own.
Tikka's its own.
Yeah, so I'll go through the main ones, right? So
Okay.
Remington 700 and all its clones. And let me just caveat this by saying some of these other actions have clones as well.
Okay.
And what I mean by clones is they're the manufacturers, like smaller manufacturers, who make actions based on the footprint. And these 6 or 7 companies that are the main ones, they're big. They're the big major rifle manufacturers out there. So Remington 700, there's the Tikka, there is Savage, and Savage has a number of models, but their 110 is their most popular. Really, I mean, the most popular when it comes to changing out stocks. Howa. Ruger has a couple models, but the Ruger American right now is probably their most popular one. No, I'm missing one. One more major one.
Winchester.
Winchester's Model 70 is kind of it's like on the verge, like stock. It'll be the last one stock makers make because there's a lot of them out there, but it's just not as popular.
Okay.
The Tikka has really taken a lot of fame since Remington's gone. And they're such a good rifle for the price. Same with the Ruger American is so dominant. How is so cheap, and it's a good rifle for how cheap it is. As a matter of fact, Howa is the most famous rifle everywhere else but the United. Well, I shouldn't say everywhere, but in many, many countries across the world, with the exception of the United States.
Really?
So when you go to Australia and you go to a number of these other countries where you can hunt, Howas are the premier or the most common rifle you
Interesting.
see. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you named all these different companies, but those offer a 700 clone? No, okay,
No.
so break this
I
down.
know, it's confusing, right? So, yeah. So each rifle manufacturer, Remington, Savage, Tikka, Howa, these companies, Ruger, I talked about, they all make their own rifles and therefore their own actions. Everything centers around the action and the footprint of the action itself. When I say the footprint, the geometry of it, because when you make a stock, you got to match the stock's geometry to the action's geometry. So each of these manufacturers make their own version. They didn't all collaborate and say, hey, let's make this exactly the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have their own version of these actions. And then over sometimes centuries, they've been selling these guns. So there's millions and millions of guns on the market that people want to keep changing their stocks out. So for stock makers, we have to, if we want to, get business, we have to look at the most popular ones, which are the ones I mentioned, and we have to make stocks for those to fit those. Because if I make a stock for a Remington 700, you can't put your Tikka in it.
Okay, so let's clarify. So I don't want to get convoluted.
Yeah, this is a rough topic to discuss on a podcast.
This is important. But this is important because when someone says, I want to put a stock on my gun, I love Grayboe. I love the Phoenix, for example. But I don't have only Remington 700 actions, or do you make a stock for the Ruger American action?
We make one for the Remington 700 and for the Tikka now.
And the Tikka.
And so for us as a manufacturer, we have to have new molds, new tooling for every single one because it's a totally separate stock.
Yes.
So we can't just I know customers expect us, why aren't you making the Tikka or the Savage? It's like, well, every time, like, we have to spend, invest all this time and effort, resources into making the Remington 700 for, let's just say, the Phoenix. Well, we have to do the same exact thing for the Savage and the same exact thing for the Tikka. All that investment in time and effort, most of that doesn't roll over. It's all reinvested time and effort. And so that's the challenge for stock makers, especially when you mold. When you're a molding company, you have to make new molds for each of those.
Okay, so that clarified it. Love it. Let's move into the next part because 2 years ago, when I was getting my first Phoenix before the launch really happened, and I was like, oh crap, I have to have a 700 action. Well, I have a Mauser and I have a Ruger action. It's like, I don't have a 700. So I went to buy an action and build a gun. And for listeners, if you ever want to hear a podcast about building your own custom rifle, check out the episode I did with Northland Shooter Supply. And so that episode talks all about purchasing an action, barrels, what components you want, and then putting it together. It's actually not as hard as you think, right? Barreled action, when we're dealing with Remingtons, that's the catch, right? And then a Savage barrel nut that we put on it. It's a Remage. That way, your the go and no go gauges, all that stuff.
Your headspace.
The headspace. There we go. Thank you. But the whole after that, headspace, all that, and then it's like barrel contour. And I was like, I don't know what barrel contour is. I thought barrels are barrels, and then all of a sudden there's like all these sporter, light sporter, varmints, like bull, all this stuff, and I was like, crap, I don't know, man. I just needed a Remington 700
right?
action.
This is the it's so hard to be in this industry sometimes because there's complexity upon complexity.
Right.
And the customer just doesn't know. And you can't blame them. I mean, there's so much to know about a rifle.
But if they're listening to this podcast, hopefully they feel inspired and confident enough to be like, oh, okay, I can go do this. What you guys did with the Phoenix specifically, and I know we're talking about that stock a lot, but that's that was your first out-of-the-box stock that you guys really put your Grayboe stamp on.
Yeah.
You created that barrel channel. This is one thing, listeners, you understand, like Ruger Americans that come in their plastic stocks, that barrel channel's contoured for the shape of the barrel. And they're not all made perfect. I know my Ruger American rubs on its right side because it's a plastic stock and whatever. And so the Phoenix has a wide barrel channel made for a variety of barrel sizes. So if you want to go with a heavy bull barrel or a carbon fiber, fat, thick barrel, it'll fit. And if you want to go with like a very light, thin barrel, it'll also fit. It might have some room on its sides. Talk about that a little bit, Ryan.
Yeah, this actually gets into some interesting stuff for us as a company. The bane of the existence, even more than different actions, is the barrel contour. The bane of a stock maker's existence, for sure. Because it seems like infinite amount of contours. And, if you try to make a decent amount of volume, every single rifle, no, I should say that. I mean, there are standard rifles that you find that off the shelf. But, if you've rebarreled your gun, you probably have a different barrel contour on there. And in the past, stock makers it was tradition, I guess, you'd call it tradition, that the barrel channel in the stock would contour the barrel. So what that means is if you get a new barrel, let's say it's slightly larger, well, it's not going to fit, and you'd have to send it back, and you'd have to have someone machine the barrel out, channel out, and it's a real pain in the butt. So we just decided, for not only for our sake, for efficiency's sake, but for the customer's sake, so that they didn't have to send their stock back and get it remachined, that we would just do what we call a universal barrel channel. Now, the concern was that for so long, people are so used to seeing the stock barrel channel contour the barrel, and there's a certain look to that. And when you see a big barrel channel and then a barrel in there, if you've looked at rifles for in the past, that doesn't look like they always have. So that was a concern that we weren't sure if we would get the acceptance of our customers. But we haven't had anybody. We've sold a lot of Phoenixes. We haven't had anybody like call and say, "I don't like it. I'm sending it back." We have had some people call and say, "Well, this doesn't look like I'm used to," and like give it a little time, and then call us and we'll replace it if you can't stand it. But everybody gets used to it. It's the same thing with the Phoenix and the Trekker when they first came out. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't know what I think about that," because it's a huge departure from what people are used to. Mm-hmm. And it really, really starts to grow. Even the Trekker, super unique, and it starts to grow on people. And so we are going to universal barrel channels on every single stock we make in the future, because we have kind of proven to ourselves. Now the Phoenix has been out for 2 years, And we have not had one person return it because they didn't like the way that the barrel looked in the barrel channel. So we're really excited about that. It makes our life super easy, and it makes the customer's life super easy when they decide they want to rebarrel.
Yeah. So I love this. When I called Northland Shooter Supply and they were talking to me about barrels, and they were like, well, what are you going to use it for? I was like, well, I'm going to use it for hunting, and I'm also going to be getting content of it. So I'm going to take pictures, going to use it in video, all that. And they're like, oh, so you want it aesthetically pleasing. And so I got talked into a 4-pound barrel to fill the barrel channel.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a carbon fiber barrel. So the next barrel, if I want to go to a thinner hunting style barrel, I drop 2 pounds off my rifle just like that, or carbon fiber and fill up the channel. I was like, crap, man, I was lugging this rifle around in the woods. Not only that, but I was also the concept of like, well, what if branches or bushes get caught up in between the barrel and the stock? And I was like, I don't know, just like, I was like, dude, help me out, set me up with what I need. I need to be hunting by September. And
yeah, so, it's like, what if you get a branch stuck in there? Well, you're carrying 2 extra pounds. Like, I feel like the trade-off wasn't there.
No.
You know, like the likelihood of you getting a branch stuck in between, like that's never what that was the concept of that anyway. You know, of the barrel channel contouring the barrel. It was for looks.
Yeah.
It's always been for looks. So sorry I interrupted.
No, I love it. That's awesome. So that was the whole point, is like, here I am 2 years later, and I'm like, oh, I really want to get that gun back out. I don't want to carry it around because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at carbon fiber barrels, and I'm like, oh, man, okay. But this is where the customization of people understanding that you can change out your rifles. You want to put a better trigger in there? There's drop-in triggers.
Mm-hmm.
You want to put a new stock on with a custom paint job? You can do that. You want to put on a new barrel? It's not as hard as you think. A lot of people, I think they're first, kind of like what you're saying about joining the SEALs as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
You freeze before you even get started.
Yeah, right.
It's not as difficult.
Right. Well, and that's we can't expect people to know all this stuff. So that's why we have to have good customer service. And this is what people expect out of us. And this is what they should expect out of us, because we are in this every single day. We know everything there is to know about how these things fit together, how the pieces fit. So we absolutely have to offer those services. And if we don't, we can't sell anything, because we can't confidently tell people what fits with what. So
totally. Okay, so this goes back to the whole chassis thing and the long range shooting, is that chassis are all built full barrel channel all the way through. Yeah. You're the first one that made a composite stock with the same concept.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that way you feel like you can fit in. Like if you're seriously concerned about aesthetics, and like if you're the type of guy that has to match your camo, which is what I am, I like to look good, feel good, play good, be good, all that. Like there's a big part of like, oh, I want to have this, and it's the and life, not an or life.
Yeah.
You guys deliver on that. You deliver the functionality, the capability, the aesthetics, all of it in one package.
Yeah.
Super phenomenal. Well, let's talk about aesthetics on the Trekker for a second. Because I know when that stock launched, a lot of feedback I received on it, because I was able to be in a couple pictures holding it for the launch. Mm-hmm. It's missing a giant portion of the buttstock. Mm-hmm. And the first feedback I got on it was, what about people who shoot with a rear bag? Talk about the Trekker a little bit.
Well, we started with the simple design concept of, we wanted to make the lightest possible stock we could. Mm-hmm. So it's not for everybody. It's for the guy who wants to, he's got a lot of gear. He wants to have as light of gear as he can, because he's got a long, trek up the mountains, and he's trying to shed every ounce he can, right? So that's what this stock is for. Because of the way that we make stocks and the capabilities that we have in manufacturing versus the other composite stock makers, we could do this. Other stock makers, I would say, probably can't do it, just because of the way they make things. So when we look at a rifle stock, the biggest weight, the biggest chunk of the rifle stock is in the butt area. So it's like clear to us, like, how do we remove that? What's the most efficient way for us and the way that we make product to remove that space, to create space there so that we can make it light? Because if you look at a butt stock on a traditional stock, it's way overkill. It's only designed that way because that's the way it feels. It feels good. That they needed, you need to put your cheek on there, and you need to have enough space for the pad, right? So then naturally behind the grip, you just have to angle that so the pad, to the bottom of the pad. And therefore that gives you your geometry, and it's a lot of geometry. It's a lot of material. So we said, well, we don't need that. We can redesign it. We can hollow out areas, and we can really make this super unique and cool. And so we did. And of course we knew that it was going to be like, people are like, what is going on here? But I'm going to be honest with you, just like the Phoenix, and actually it's taken people longer than the Phoenix, but talking to my bigger, like my OEM customers, my manufacturers we sell to, of course we sent it to them. And at first, even with the Phoenix, they're like, oh, I don't know about this. And then they just keep looking at it, and they keep looking at it, and they leave it in their office, and they come in every day like, oh, I don't know. Every single time we've done that, that's the sentiment. It takes a little while for people to get used to it. It's because we're conditioned to seeing a rifle stock looking a different way. And now we've got this huge departure from that traditional looking stock. And it takes a while for people to be like, oh, I get it now. I get why they did that. We put a lot of time and effort into these designs.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it just to look cool. We did it because there's real functionality in it. And but it just so happens to also look cool, I think.
I've never actually shot with a rear bag. That's something that I have yet to like fully jump into. So, I mean, hunting wise, okay, you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't. My intent wasn't people are most likely going to be, you really that concerned about it. It's more like you're deep in the mountains, and you probably you see an animal and you shoot it offhand or something. That was more our thought, just to try to save the weight. And yeah, maybe if you do get an opportunity to lay down, maybe it's not ideal for a rear bag, but at the same time, it took you 3 days to get there, and you're sure as heck excited about the fact that you're not totally exhausted because your gear didn't just weigh you down.
Yeah.
So, there's trade-offs in everything we do.
Yeah.
And so, but I will say that, if that is something that we continue to get the rear bag itself, or the rear bag stabilizer of the stock, that's something we could look at doing in future modifications. If that's something that people are like, yeah, I wish it had that. Probably wouldn't take a whole lot of extra weight or time for us to do. It was just not something that we were thinking about when we designed it. We were thinking about most likely just being a quick offhand shot, up at 10,000 feet or something like that. So.
Makes sense. What can we expect out of the Eagle? Any teasers that you want to?
Well, yeah, we've already designed another stock. It's called the Eagle. It's going to be probably launching right before hunting season, is our hope, and it's going to be. It's really our traditional stock, our traditional hunting stock. It will, for the best way to say it, it'll have the same feel of the Phoenix and the Trekker, but it will replace. Start replacing the Outlander. It'll have some really cool feel, really cool features, but it's that real traditional. It's the traditional coupled with the Grayboe new design style.
Yes.
And it'll be at a really good price point. It'll be super light, and it'll be something that I think will be really well. It's not as shocking at first as the Trekker.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different.
Still full barrel channel, everything?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
Same. Yeah. And the other thing we didn't quite talk about, but I'll just briefly mention, as the same as the barrel channel that has all these different contours, one of the ways we've got around, so if you look at all the Remington 700 clones, they're not all exactly identical. This is all the nuance too. Remington 700 clones just means you can fit a Remington 700 in the stock. But there's also ejection ports that you have to deal with. You have safeties that you have to deal with, these safety cutouts. There's the bolt release notches that you have to deal with, right? These little tiny nuances. So what we did, and just like you mentioned with the chassis, the same with the barrel channel, when we kind of copied the chassis idea of just having that straight barrel channel, we just lowered the top line of the stock. So the ejection port and the bolt release notch, none of the stuff that's basically on center line of the action, now we don't have to account for that anymore. We lower the top line of the stock so that any Remington 700 clone that you have, no matter what the shape of the ejection port, it doesn't interfere. You don't have to get you don't have to sand away at that. So that universalizes that area too. So any Remington 700 clone will fit without any modifications. That wasn't always the case with traditional stocks that had that stock that came up to the center line of the action. Mm-hmm. There was still stuff you had to deal with to some degree.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And the balance of the gun is still there.
Yeah. I mean, every gun's a little different, and when you say the balance of the gun, you might have a heavy barrel. The balance isn't all in the stock.
I have a heavy barrel.
So that's up to the user to balance how they can.
Yeah.
Because the stock is only a portion of the balance.
Okay.
It's like you've experienced. You get a heavy barrel, and you're gonna be front heavy. So that's really your, whether you have a gunsmith or whether you're putting it together yourself, that's really there.
Okay, so here's a question that I have not checked because I built my gun to your stock. For the everyday Joe out there who's listening to this podcast is like, okay, I'm going to go pick up a Grayboe stock, 2 bolts, bada bing, bada boom, switching it out. Do you notice any accuracy changes when you are switching stocks? Obviously, as a hunter and ethical, and you always want your gun dialed in, but when you're just switching a stock in those 2 bolts, does that really affect the accuracy that much out of the gate?
Well, plastic stocks are the worst stocks you can have for accuracy because they touch your barrel. The worst thing you can have is something touching your barrel. That's the worst. That's the number one worst thing you can have. But there are other issues too. Plastic it moves a lot under various heat and cold and environmental factors. So typically when you take a plastic stock off, you're going to put something on there that's better. If you're upgrading to a composite stock, it's going to fit much better. You're not going to have any issue with it moving in environmental conditions. Your barrel channel's not going to hit. And one of the other big things that's something that to think about is when you tighten your guard screws down, and if your action surface doesn't mate perfectly with your stock surface, you get stresses in the action as you start to screw your guard screws down. And this affects accuracy because stresses in the action will push the bullet in a certain direction into the lands, and then it won't fly straight. And so this is kind of the old concept of bedding. When actions weren't very precise, when the old Remington 700s, you could look at them and turn them, and they were like almost oblong shaped in a way. And stocks, and the machinery that you built this stuff on wasn't very precise. So you would put an action in there that was totally, not very, well in spec, and you'd put a stock in a stock that wasn't very well in spec. You have to fill those gaps with something, right?
Yeah.
So that you didn't tighten down on the guard screws and literally bend the action and put stresses. Nowadays,
and that was the whole concept of glass and pillar bedding. Is that?
Yes. I mean, this. I stop me if I'm just okay, because this pillar bedding, from what I can understand, originated because plastic stocks, people started seeing plastic stocks were so bad for accuracy that they needed to actually elevate the barreled action above the stock itself. Because if you sat it right down in the stock, there was so much movement and tension and stuff that was going on because plastic is not stable. It's not stable. So the manufacturers got wise, and they put these pillars in there, and the pillars would stick up, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch up out of the action. And so basically when you put your when you put your rifle in your rifle was sitting on pillars and nothing else. That's it. And that's, I think, the best I can come to the conclusion is that was the originator of pillar bedding. It's morphed a little bit from there because now people, for some reason, I'm not sure how this came to be, but some people think that it's for, crushing. And to some degree, when you screw your guard screws in, those pillars create a very consistent, what we call pinch point. But I don't want to get too far into, I don't want to get too detailed because that's too much. But there's a distance that you have to have between the action and the magazine. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, your rounds won't feed. So those pillars can help keep the distance right so that your mag feeds into your action properly.
Dude, this is
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because it gets complex.
Okay, so to simplify it, your stocks,
yeah,
you just need to put your action in and screw it in.
Yeah.
So
we've done all that work for you. This is what we have to think about as a stock maker to make sure that all this stuff lines up properly.
Yeah.
And so we've done all this work for you. So all you've got to do is make sure you get, call someone if you don't know, but make sure you get the right, action to fit, your stock, and that's it.
And that is why you guys are the People's Riflestock.
That's right.
You've done the work for the people.
That's right.
People, listen. You want to customize your gun, and you want to make it cooler, lighter, better looking. You want to dip it. You want to whatever. Customize it in any way. There's only one place to go, and that's the People's Riflestock.
That's right.
Grayboe.
That's right.
Grayboe.com?
Grayboe.com. Grayboe.
Two sons.
My two sons.
Gray and Bow.
Yep.
Grayboe.com.
Yep.
I love it. Find you on social media as well, all that stuff. Okay, guys, I'm going to have the links to Grayboe and everything in the show notes. Go check it out. Go get yourself. I love the Phoenix Trekker. I definitely am one of the people I got to wrap my head around it a little bit, but I know
I'll wait for you.
I know it makes sense. I know it. Yes, I want to cut weight. If ounces matter, the Trekker is 11 ounces lighter than the Phoenix. I think.
Phoenix. Let me do some math here. Yes, just about 11 ounces. Yeah.
So I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's 16 ounces in a pound.
Yeah, and you got to think the Phoenix is lighter by 6 to 8 ounces than any other stock in its class. So I mean, we're talking pretty light stuff.
Yeah. Woo! Hot dog. Let's go, baby. Permission to buzz the tower. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I'm Johnny Mack, Ryan McMillan, Grayboe. Hope you guys are having a blessed day. Good luck this coming fall. Get yourself a custom rifle stock, one of the People's Riflestock. Put it on your gun. Let us know what you think of it. Send us out a message on social media. Drop us a line. Love to hear from you. Everybody, remember, life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. Freedom on. And as always, stay soulful.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.